Now discuss BTC and other related news is Market Gauge Group Managing Director Michelle Schneider, and we've got Laguna Labs founder Stefan Rust. Hello there, Stefan and Michelle. So Stefan, let's start with you. Do you see Bitcoin sustaining $20,000 resistance?
Yeah, I mean, it's dropped below 20,000 already, so we've seen it go below that a couple of times. It could go even further below that. We don't know, but I don't think we're at the bottom, that's for sure. We're close to the bottom, so, what I'm doing, I'm what we call DCAing, right? So I'm dollar cost averaging as the market. I still believe that there's a lot of upside in Bitcoin in the longer term. I think we just broke 20 million minted Bitcoins, or 90, already out there. There's 1 million left to be minted. So we know that it is a good inflation hedge already today. So we're going to see it go up.
Sure. Michelle, what do you make of the latest remarks from the New York Federal Reserve Bank President John Williams saying interest rates need to be pushed above 3.5% and no rate cuts happening next year?
Well, he's probably right. I'd much rather listen to Powell. Ultimately, I think he has the supreme vote at the end of the day. And he's even saying kind of the same thing. Although he always capitulates a little bit, we're going to look at the data points. Next meeting is September 21st. The expectation is for another 75 basis points raise. There's been talk that they'll cap it at 4%. It's going to be really hard for them to chase inflation, getting it back down to 2%, because there are things that are out of their control. But for the most part, what the market is hearing right now is that the pressure is on, and Bitcoin obviously is responding in kind. It tends to trade very similarly to NASDAQ in particular, in that it's very interest rate sensitive currently and more speculative.
So I suppose towards the end of the year, Michelle, where do you see Bitcoin and I suppose the NASDAQ and other tech growth stocks headed?
Well, I think right now, if we do continue with the analogy of Bitcoin and NASDAQ is definitely under the most pressure as far as the other indices go, and some of the key sectors like transportation and retail and real estate, et cetera. But I really do believe, and I feel like I'm a minority here in this belief, although I was kind of encouraged to hear what Stefan said, is that we are a range-bound market. So those June lows that we made, even though the rally was more robust based on some hope of a pivot, it still doesn't necessarily mean that if we break those lows, we're going to go down much harder. And there's a really good chance that we actually maintain those lows as well. So I think if we maintain those lows, I think we're really going sideways. And if we just look out at the next couple months, clearly Bitcoin and most of the cryptocurrencies in September are probably good to avoid unless something really odd happens, and then we can reevaluate from there.
Stefan, what are your thoughts on controlling inflation and the Fed raising rates and what impact that will have on Bitcoin?
I mean, it's had a huge impact, right? We just saw this large decline in the last couple of days. I mean, significantly large in contrast to traditional industries because of the announcement, the 8-minute announcement that Jerome Powell made. I think, inflation is going to be really hard to get under control. There are so many aspects. We're going through a very interesting time on the planet. Alliances are shifting. Relationships are changing. You're seeing new currencies emerging. So the monopoly around currencies is evolving. You just announced Iran, using Bitcoin as its trade currency. You're seeing a whole set of new alliances between China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, sort of using trade. China going to Saudi Arabia, trying to negotiate payments for oil, no more in US dollars, but in using the renminbi. What does that mean for the global landscape, and how is the world evolving in this environment? But I think in the long term, crypto and Web3 and crypto assets are really interesting asset class. Why? Because you see today that despite having this, crypto contagion that we've had, despite the, crash of Terra Luna, Celsius, BlockFi issues, Voyager, etc., the community that is building in the DeFi world, in crypto land, are super engaged, hyper positive. We've all got lots of wounds and scars to tell and stories to tell, funds and monies lost. But actually, we just had Korea Blockchain Week, the home of Terra Luna. And what was the momentum there? There was a huge positive attitude. We're back building again and growing and trying to create new decentralized financial opportunities where everybody can participate, and driving inclusion where youth and younger participants, maybe disenfranchised individuals, people struck in countries or growing up in countries where they are struggling with super high inflation, super corrupt governments, all can now participate in a more regulated, governed, decentralized model. And so that is, I think, where a lot of the excitement is, and the longer term vision of where crypto assets can evolve towards and appreciate, because the utility associated will grow.
You know, I just want to pick out one of those elements in there, and that Bitcoin is reportedly being used by Iran to evade sanctions. Michelle, is that bullish or bearish for Bitcoin?
Well, again, I think there's two ways you have to look at the digital space. It is definitely the future, no doubt about it. And in fact, everything will change, and I think we'll finally start to see a whole new world in terms of growth based on the digital age. But looking at everything right now, we're not there. We're not even close at this point. Maybe we're looking 3-5 years out or longer. So answering your question with Iran, I would say initially, it's a factor that helps in terms of the future. But for right now, it really plays into all of the geopolitical concerns that were just pointed out, not to mention there could be a part of a problem with the whole cryptocurrency space, and I'm not really knowing for a fact, but it just seems to me weather problems from floods to droughts, considering this is a mined instrument, I don't know at what point that has impact. We haven't heard anything about that, or at least I haven't yet, but just speculating that it could happen, you know, is something that certainly I'm keeping eyes on. So yeah, I think for the short term, it might be slightly bearish, or at least, like I said, not necessarily bullish. Longer term, this mass adoption that will happen over the course of years, totally bullish.
All right, echoing Stefan there. So September is seasonally, it tends to be a profit-taking month. So taking a look at September, Stefan, what is your outlook with the Fed, as well as we have the merge and Ethereum coming out? And there's been some talk that perhaps some creditors may get some Bitcoin back from Mt. Gox. With this whole mix, what do you see happening in September?
So I think the Mt. Gox creditors are going to be happy. They're going to get something back that is way more worth than what they left behind. What are they going to do with that? That's the big question. I think the interesting part, though, is the merge. That's creating a lot of opportunity. It's going to allow for better efficiency in the network. You know, and ecologically it's going to be friendlier, which is what it is. Whether that is true or not is debatable. It's moving from proof of work to proof of stake. So it's going to be an interesting time, and I think that's a lot of excitement in terms of how a whole chain with the amount of momentum that Ethereum has managed to evolve, continuously innovate, and build a whole new system on top whilst operating the existing system. And that, to me, is something that I think is not really appreciated enough, that the complexity, it's basically saying the whole of Wall Street will replace that and create a whole new system, and then throw away the old system and just put all the funds that have been created on the old system onto this new system that we created, and create whole new policies and frameworks and approval processes associated with that. That's the magnitude of this. Ultimately, it's not quadrillion size. It's still only a couple of hundred, maybe even a trillion, just shy of a trillion, if you look at that whole ecosystem. But that is, to me, a significant improvement and proof that the drive for innovation is really strong in the blockchain world. And that is interesting. Whether people are going to profit of this, for sure. In change, there is always profit-taking opportunity, and there is always new money-making opportunities. So we'll see where that goes.
Just want to give Michelle a chance to respond as well. With the Ethereum merge coming, what do you think that means for Bitcoin in terms of, I mean, I'd say many people in the Bitcoin community are pretty happy with the proof of work and the security that lends itself to and therein. So, but by contrast, you have folks in the Ethereum community whispering of a flippening. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to agree again with Stefan's analysis there. I mean, there's so many issues. Right now we have Avalanche crashed another 11%, and FBI now going further into criminal investigation in terms of the whole cryptocurrency space. So these kind of slashes will continue to happen. But if I may, Christine, I'd like to put some technical numbers on it, because that's really my specialty here, is technical analysis. And actually, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a lot of the other coins have been so highly technical. So right now, if we look at just Ethereum alone, it actually has a better chart formation or pattern, if you will, than Bitcoin. Whereas Bitcoin may be looking like this sort of head and shoulders top that's forming, Ethereum is actually looking a little bit more like an inverted head and shoulders bottom. So there you go. If your proof in the pudding is in price, which is what we traders are all about, then if we can hold up at these current levels and we can get through 2,200 in Ethereum, that could be really interesting. So that's kind of why we're on hold, not trying to think too much about all of the news and all of the alliances and all of the friction, but more like, what does the price say? So that's kind of where we're at right now.
All right, we'll end it there. Thank you so much, Michelle and Stefan. That's Market Gauge Group Managing Director Michelle Schneider and Laguna Labs founder Stefan Rust.